You know, today's headlines are filled with mixed reactions about the recent release of POW soldier Bergdahl. And I'd like to know, if you were still in office today as Secretary of State, would this have been the move that you would have made to support this? And what really should be foremost on our minds with respect to this issue?
Well, I can't answer the question that way because I don't believe in sort of second-guessing, people who have to make these hard choices. But I would make a couple of points. First, we do have a tradition, and I ascribe to it. It's a tradition that I think is not only one embedded in our military, but in our country, and that is we try not to leave any of our soldiers on the field. We try to make sure that, insofar as possible, we bring them home. And this young man, whatever the circumstances, was an American, or is an American citizen, was serving in our military. And a lot of our closest allies do prisoner exchanges to get our POWs back all the time. I mean, Israel did, I don't know, maybe 1,000 prisoners to get Gilad Shalit back. And, people said, oh my gosh, you're letting people out of jail and all that. But, the idea that you really care for your own citizens, and particularly those in uniform, I think is a very noble one. I believe that the important issue now is to do what's being done for Sergeant Bergdahl, which is to try to restore his health, mental and physical. I'm sure that at some point, maybe not yet, but at some point he will undergo very specific, deep debriefings, because he was with the Taliban for 5 years. And he was in particular with something called the Haqqani Network, which is one of the most effective fighting forces that our troops and the Afghans went up against. So we need to get as much information out of him as possible. And that, I think, is valuable in and of itself, because as we are drawing down our troops and ending the longest military engagement in combat in American history — we still have troops in South Korea, for example, and in Germany, but in terms of combat, we're going to be ending our combat role. We need as much intelligence as we can get about what's happening inside the Taliban. Are there 2 or 3 or 4 factions? Because when we end our combat role, although the Afghan National Security Forces have improved, and we and our coalition partners in NATO and elsewhere have invested an enormous amount in training and equipping the Afghans, and they've done some very effective efforts, but still, they're going to face a very strong challenge from the Taliban. And so the intelligence we can get is important for their security, as well as our security as we draw down. But we also still know that if there is any room for a negotiated peace, we need to have a better sense of what the Taliban will or won't do, and how much pressure we need to continue to exert on them. So there's a lot of factors at work here. And then finally, of course, as been reported, the government of Qatar has made representations, even guarantees, that these 5 Taliban prisoners from Guantanamo will not be let out of Qatar. And I certainly hope they follow through on the assurances that they've provided. So there's a lot here, and we're going to learn more as it goes forward. And last thing I would say is, I know Secretary Hagel said periodically you get videos of prisoners, and it's not just it wasn't just Sergeant Bergdahl that was being watched, but Americans have been kidnapped and put into terrible situations in a number of places, and occasionally a video will be sent. It's a kind of a proof of life video. And the last one of Bergdahl showed him under tremendous physical and mental stress and looking, according to Secretary Hagel, very weak. And I think there was a concern that if they didn't move, that it might be too late. So it's a very, that's why I named my book Hard Choices, because you don't want to give up anything. You don't want to, see these 5 prisoners go back to combat. You don't want to, there's a lot that you don't want to have happen. On the other hand, you also don't want an American citizen, if you can avoid it, especially a soldier, to die in captivity. So I think we have a long way to go before we really know how this is going to play out.